Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're unpacking one of the most culturally significant and honestly most widely misunderstood sentences in human history. We're going to figure out what Matthew 7:1 actually means. You know, if you look back about 50 years ago, the cultural memory verse of that whole generation was John 3:16, right? This massive anthem of divine sacrifice. But today, that has shifted completely. Now the anthem is all about ultimate secular tolerance, and it's summed up in Matthew 7:1. Judge not. So, here's our agenda for today's explainer. First, the modern anthem of tolerance. Then, translating the word judge, the comedy of the plank, the paradox of discernment, and finally, the Roman bema seat. We're going to deconstruct this modern interpretation by looking at the linguistics, the historical context, and this fascinating issue of human data. All right, section 1, the modern anthem of tolerance. Let's talk about how this verse is frequently weaponized today as a literal conversation ender, basically used to completely shut down moral accountability. Judge not, that you be not judged. Our source makes a really great point here. Modern society uses this specific verse to paint Jesus as this passive, hyper-tolerant relativist. Like his primary message was just, hey, you do you. It kind of suggests that holding any moral conviction about someone else is basically the worst possible offense. But actually, the historical context tells a totally different story. Context is absolutely everything here, guys. These words sit right at the tail end of the Sermon on the Mount. And if we back up and look at the 2 chapters leading up to this quote, Jesus isn't lowering moral expectations at all. No, he's raising the bar so high it completely shatters any human illusion of self-righteousness. I mean, he equates anger to murder and lust to adultery. It makes literally no logical sense that he'd demand the highest moral purity in human history and then just suddenly tell his followers, oh, hey, never evaluate right from wrong. Moving on to section 2, translating the word judge. To really get what's actually being commanded here, we've got to look at the original Koine Greek language. The word translated as judge in our English Bibles is the Greek verb krino. Now in English, judging can just mean, evaluating a beauty contest or checking if a piece of fruit is ripe. But krino, that is a heavy, dark courtroom term. It means to condemn, to pass a final damning sentence. It means assuming the role of the executioner. So Jesus isn't forbidding intellectual discernment here. He's explicitly targeting that self-righteous, pharisaical spirit of condemnation. And notice the vocabulary that was left out. This is so cool. If Jesus wanted his followers to just turn off their brains and stop evaluating behavior, he would have used completely different Greek words. He could have used diakrino, which just means to evaluate or distinguish, or anakrino, which means to examine carefully. But he didn't. He deliberately used krino to warn them against acting as a merciless executioner. He actually attaches a chilling warning to this command, what the source brilliantly calls the boomerang effect. Jesus says, with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. It's like a spiritual law of gravity. If you insist on walking around holding a clipboard, tracking everybody's failures, and acting as the final condemning judge of your neighbor, well, God is going to use that exact same unyielding measuring cup on you. You're effectively signing your own death warrant. Okay, section 3, the comedy of the plank. This is where Jesus uses slapstick humor and intense hyperbole to make just a devastating point about hypocrisy. Jesus, having worked as a carpenter, borrows imagery straight from his own trade. Look at this hilarious contrast. He compares a karphos, which is a tiny speck of sawdust, to a dokos, a massive 10-foot structural roof beam. Just picture the pure slapstick absurdity of a guy with a 10-foot roof beam literally protruding from his eye, wiping out innocent bystanders every time he turns his head. And he's sincerely offering to do delicate ocular surgery to remove a tiny speck of sawdust from his brother's eye. It's wild. Jesus diagnoses this behavior with one razor-sharp word: hypocrite. But here's the thing. In the ancient Greek world, a hypokrites wasn't a religious term at all. It referred specifically to a stage actor who wore a large, painted mask to play a part in a drama. So the ancient hypocrite wasn't just some guy who struggled with sin. He was an actor. Someone faking moral superiority, hiding catastrophic, blinding flaws while parading around like a pure, unblemished surgeon sent to fix everyone else. And here is where the secular world misses the punchline entirely. Jesus doesn't say, hey, leave the painful speck alone and just mind your own business. I mean, a speck in the eye can cause literal blindness. Instead, he demands a very specific sequence. Step 1, vicious self-examination. You absolutely have to deal with your own pride first. Pull out the plank. Step 2, loving redemptive correction. Once your vision is actually clear, then you go and help heal your brother. Which brings us to section 4, the paradox of discernment. This marks a jarring transition in the text, one that completely shatters that modern illusion of a passive, non-judgmental Christianity. Right after saying, "Judge not," Jesus turns right around and commands his followers to not throw pearls before pigs, to not give holy things to dogs, and to beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. So, wait, how can you obey that without making a judgment? Honestly, you can't. To protect sacred things from violent scavengers and to inspect the fruit of false prophets, you absolutely must make a firm, discerning judgment. And this dynamic shows exactly how the early church operated. The apostles were constantly engaging in rigorous moral judgment. For instance, in 1 Corinthians 5, Paul explicitly commands the Corinthian church to judge an insider who is living in severe immorality. But the motive is the key here. He didn't order this to destroy the guy, he did it to desperately rescue and restore him. Biblical correction looks across from a place of shared brokenness to heal. Condemnation, that looks down from a pedestal to destroy. And this is exactly where the modern idol of empathy totally collapses. Modern empathy claims that judging is the exact opposite of loving, right? It demands total affirmation of every choice, no matter what. But true, biblical, agape love, that requires diagnosing the spiritual disease to save a life. Think about it. If someone is walking blindfolded toward a cliff, the absolute most hateful thing you can do is smile and affirm their journey. True love requires enough courage to yell, "Stop!" All right, final section. Section 5, the Roman Bema Seat. Let's dive into the deepest theological layer of this explainer and discover exactly why humans are strictly forbidden from passing final judgment. You see, we face a fundamental problem of human data. We are completely unqualified to condemn another soul because, frankly, we make rulings based on maybe 1% of the evidence. We see the action, the outcome, the visible damage. But God sees 100%. He sees the generational trauma, the chemical imbalances, the secret fears, the exact spiritual forces at play. God alone possesses the infinite data needed to perfectly balance absolute holiness with limitless mercy. When the Apostle Paul tells the early church they will all stand before the judgment seat of God, he uses the Greek word bema. The bema was this raised platform right in the center of a Roman marketplace, where the magistrate sat with absolute authority to hand down final verdicts. So, when we condemn someone, we are basically attempting a cosmic coup. We are trying to step up onto the bema seat and literally dethrone the righteous judge of the universe. Crazy, right? James 4:12 echoes this perfectly. There is only one lawgiver and judge, he who is able to save and to destroy. But who are you to judge your neighbor? The source beautifully reminds us that we are all just fellow patients in a hospital. Sure, you might be a little further along in your recovery, but you are still breathing the exact same air of grace that's keeping the person in the next bed alive. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. When you look at the flaws of others, are your judgments rooted in the arrogance of condemnation or the gentle hands of redemptive love? We are commanded to see clearly, speak truthfully, and rescue those walking toward a cliff, for sure. But we cannot sit on the judgment seat. So the very next time you engage with a broken world, are you picking up the gavel of a judge or the towel of a brother?